So let's go ahead. And so as you can see, we have started recording. All right, let's get going. So again, good morning and welcome. We want to thank all of you for joining us this morning. We understand that you all have very busy work lives, and so thank you for taking the time out this morning to join us. This first slide is the order of presenters this morning and our contact information. So again, I'm Beth Chaplin. I am the Title IV Supervisor at DHS. And also presenting this morning, we're going to have Darianne McCormick and Sarah Ladd. We're going to have Jessica Broger, Nick Vogel, Aaron Kintop, and Erica Jepson. And as you can see, we're going to be going over quite a bit of content today. We're going to be talking about our sex trafficked, commercially sexually exploited youth and at-risk youth program, our pregnant and parenting youth program, our certified residential setting for supervised independent living in a facility program, and our qualified residential treatment program. And I think probably most importantly, what all of this looks like in SSIS and all of the required information and what needs to be filled out in SSIS. And so you'll see a few of my colleagues have come on camera, so you guys can give a little wave. Okay, and so again, for the introduction and overview of what we're going over today, we're going to be going over the specialized residential settings and the SSIS documentation process, again, of the 4 specialized setting types: Qualified Residential Treatment Program, or QRTP, Sex Trafficked, Commercially Sexually Exploited, and At-Risk Youth Program, which we refer to as ST, CSE, and At-Risk, our Pregnant and Parenting Youth Program, also referred to as PPY, and our Certified Residential Setting for Supervised Independent Living in a Facility program, which at times we refer to as SIL. And I do want to make a distinction. When we're talking about the Certified Residential Setting for SIL, I just want folks to make sure to really pay attention, because it does have different requirements, and it is different than your typical supervised independent living setting. So I just want to kind of get that bug in folks' ears, okay? Because that is a different type of a setting than what you consider a typical supervised independent living setting, okay? Then we're going to have, we hope, plenty of time for questions, and then we'll have a closing. Does that sound all right for folks? Okay, and I guess I should ask, although, do we have any questions? And if folks have any questions, I guess, do we have the hand raise function in this? Or I guess I could say, if we have any questions, can folks quick put them in the chat?
Beth, it does look like they have the hand raise function too. Paula put her hand up real quick, so.
Okay, it's under the reaction, okay. And I ask that you all forgive me. We've worked so much in different platforms other than this one for so long that I kind of forget which one we're in, and I'm not quite used to this one anymore. So thank you, Cheryl. Okay, we'll go ahead and keep on moving forward. Okay, so again, this training is focused on supporting our county and tribal our agency caseworkers and supervisors in giving you the information needed to meet the documentation requirement for placements in these new specialized settings. And again, we're going to keep mentioning the different settings types: QRTP, ST, CSE, and at-risk, PPY, and again, the certified residential SIL setting. And we are going to share the tools to guide workers through that placement process in specialized settings and the documentation steps. And our goal is to help simplify the process of placement post FFPSA implementation. That's kind of a mouthful, but that is our goal today, because we understand that Family First has been this big behemoth of sort of an idea And all of these pieces have come kind of flying at folks. And now that it's implemented, we really want to take a breath and make sure that folks really understand what this all means. And more importantly, what are all of the pieces required to continue to implement this in a way that allows Title IV e-claiming. This is a little bit of information on what we are working on at the department. We are working on a variety of tools that we think are really going to be useful to our county and tribal partners. We're really on the cusp of having these tools ready. As with a lot of things that come from DHS, there are a variety of departments that are involved in this work. And then we have quite a bit of a process in our organization to have things approved. So editing various levels of our administration. So it does take us a little bit of time to get things out the door. But I have to say, for example, we have a settings flow chart that is pretty fantastic. And once we get that finalized, that's going to be, we think, really helpful to our county and tribal child welfare partners. So this is just an example of some of the items that we were hoping to have finalized to be able to share in this presentation today. We weren't quite able to meet that goal, but they're coming, and they're coming soon. And so to be continued, but they're coming. And I know you keep hearing that from us, but we're really close. We're on the cusp. You think that's a fair thing to say, Aaron? I think that's a fair assessment. We're kind of right there. So. Okay, and then also wanted to make you aware, and we will be sharing this PowerPoint. We do have some SSIS short micro learnings, and these are all linked in this document. For example, the first one is the juvenile treatment screening team when accepted. We also have down here the QRTP 60-day court approval, and one that we're starting to come up on, the extended placement review. So right now, starting in October, for example, for children and youth that are 13 years and older, we're going to be coming up on the 12 months of continuous placement review timeline, and starting in month 13 for the non-consecutive month reviews. So those micro learnings are available. And then, as you can see below that, all job aids related to the QRTP placement and other FFPSA data entry. And they can be found at that link for the SSIS worker documentation. So those links will be very helpful. And again, we have Erica Jepson from SSIS that is here to present today and answer questions. So we need to take advantage of having her with us. And again, this is just a gentle reminder of some of the other requirements for placements, decisions, and FFPSA settings. So you have to remember that county or tribal child welfare agencies still need to have placement authority via a court order or a voluntary placement agreement. We still need to remember that the placement preference is still for family, foster home, or kinship placement ultimately. All of the best interest factors still do apply. Children may have individual needs that fit into one or more setting types, right? And let's not forget that Family First does not change ICWA and MIFPA requirements. And then what we have bolded at the bottom, just to make sure that that is emphasized, that the new requirements and new documents for kids, for placements in qualified residential treatment programs, the QRTP, the STSE, CSE, and at-risk and PPY settings, that they must be met. And that's what we are going to get into right now. And I am going to hand it off to, oh, now I'm losing it.
Darianne.
Okay, thank you, Darianne. It's going to be Darianne and Sarah Ladd. I apologize, Darianne. So I'm handing it off.
No, it's okay. We switched it up. We switched it up. It was going to be Sarah, now it's me. So good morning. And Sarah is on and can jump in at any time if she feels like I missed anything. Excuse me. I'm Darian McCormick, and I am one of the Human Trafficking Child Protection Program coordinators here at DHS, along with Sarah Ladd. I share that role about part-time and have been working on both sides of Family First Prevention Services. You can go to the next slide. So this morning I will talk about the specialized settings for sex trafficked, commercially sexually exploited, and at-risk youth. We aren't going to get into all of the details and history around that, and really focus on the SSIS requirements for those placements. But I'll start with a brief overview. And so why do we want to look at a specialized setting if a youth has been identified as being sex trafficked, commercially sexually exploited, or at risk of either of those? The specialized settings do offer, or those youth identified do have an increased need for safety, both physical and emotional safety, and then also cared for by trained staff. So one of the things that certified settings for ST, CSC, and at-risk residential placements, they are, when they go through the certification process, there is a commissioner-approved training that all staff are required to take. And that training was just recently released. Sarah and I worked on it along with multiple stakeholders from across the state. And our Safe Harbor team, and it's a series of online modules that staff will be taking to have the specialized setting. Also, the specialized settings do offer prevention education. When is the next training? So I just want to clarify, the training that I just referenced is an online training that is for residential services staff. So those programs that are identified as certified, the staff will have access to the training online. And Christy, if your question is regarding the training for child welfare professionals, that there is another one next month. And those trainings for child welfare professionals are offered monthly at this time and online through the Child Welfare Training Academy. And so the other unique thing about these specialized settings is that they offer prevention, a human trafficking prevention education. Agencies can choose what prevention program they'd like to use. We at DHS and MDH have partnered with Love 146 for their Not a Number curriculum. So several of the certified programs have that available. And then for the eligible population, so these programs will be for the youth who have been identified by child welfare staff as either having been trafficked or exploited or are at risk. And I'm going to put in the chat here the identification guide for how we identify youth to be at risk. There are primary risk factors, which include involvement in trafficking or exploitation, either sex or labor, or association with those who have. And then secondary risk factors such as a history of abuse or trauma, homelessness, drug use, family conflict. And then the other thing to keep in mind is how intersectionality and racism and white supremacy and social oppression impact these risk factors. You can go to the next slide. And so when we look at how caseworkers or child welfare agencies are placing youth in these settings, there will be an identification by staff and either in using the state definition. And so I did, like I said, I did place or pasted the at-risk definition. It is an eDoc available online, and I put that in the chat. Once that youth is identified to either have been trafficked, exploited, or at risk, that documentation needs to happen in SSIS, and we'll get into that as soon as I'm done. Erica will walk us through some of that. And then there there also needs to be the individualized assessment of needs of what is an appropriate placement for the youth. There's multiple different types of settings for youth identified as trafficked, exploited, or at risk. And they range anywhere from emergency shelter to residential treatment. And so really looking at what is the most appropriate placement for that youth. You can go to the next slide. And so again, that first phase, this is kind of just recapping a little bit of what I just explained, is that assessment. As Beth mentioned, there is still, there are several things that have to happen before youth can be placed in one of these specialized programs. There has to be a placement authority by the child welfare agency. So whether that's a court order through a CHIPS or voluntary placement agreement, the agency has to have placement authority. And then to determine that the youth's needs are not able to be met in a family foster home or with a kinship placement. And then you assess the individual needs of the child or youth and talk with the child and youth and their family, and then identify what are the best or what placement would be in the best interest for that child. You can go to the next phase or slide. Then the next step would be the referral process. And this information also will be in a handout available that Beth had mentioned that will be available after the training that walks through each step of what agencies need to do to place a youth in a specialized setting or a QRTP. And so there is the referral process once the youth has been identified as needing a placement in a specialized setting. And you can look on DHS licensing lookup. You can look up, they have a new search feature on the licensing lookup page where you can select specialized settings under children's residential treatment, and then it comes up with, children's residential facilities. Somebody can correct me if I'm saying the title wrong from the DHS licensing lookup, but it will bring up multiple different options that you can select. And the ST, CSC, and at-risk specialized setting is a search option on there. And then on a separate website, it will verify if that agency is Title 4E approved at this time. You can go to the next slide. And I can, once I'm done talking, I can put those links too into the chat. And then once a placement is made, the agency will coordinate with the residential facility and to make sure that they will meet the goals of the youth's out-of-home placement. The placement provider, the residential program, needs to be provided with a copy of the out-of-home placement plan. And then the program is to be trauma-informed for youth. And then you can go to the next slide. Oh, and then that's all. Sarah, I don't know if you want to jump in and add anything else. Otherwise, we can pass it over to Erica to talk about the requirements for the SSIS documentation for specialized settings.
No, thank you very much, Darianne. I just did put the links in that you were referencing. I put in the licensing lookup link, and Darianne and I will be available if there are questions about what she just shared once Erica's done going through the documentation or later on. Thanks so much.
Good morning, everyone. So here we're just going to go through the documentation requirements for STCSE at risk. Here you will find the SEY documentation folder. You will find that under the person node. Once you open the person node, you find the sex trafficking exploitation at risk. And then you click on the menu and choose, or click on the action menu and choose new SEYST. Of course, you can also get there from right clicking on the folder. You will answer every question, and this This field needs to be filled out for every child, whether they're in placement or not, and should be completed again if caseworkers discover new information. Next slide. The next one is the at-risk field. So again, you find it the same under the person node. Click on the action menu and click new at-risk. This screen only needs to be completed when a child is in out-of-home placement, and then a new at-risk screen should be completed with every placement. Again, answering both questions and putting anything in the comments that you may think is important or relevant to know regarding that child. Next slide. So then once a child is placed in a STCSE at-risk placement, you will want to make sure that you have the correct setting and reason. You can see the correct settings and reasons on the right in the grid. You will know that you have the correct setting and reason because it will say STCSE at risk next to the potentialized specialized setting certification. The other important thing to do is you want to make sure and link the SEY, or at risk to the placement. So in order to do that from the placement menu, you go to the action menu and click add existing SEY, STY, or at risk link. And then you see at number 3, the box over there will show you the SEY, STY, or at-risk links that you have completed. Choose the most recent one, click OK, and then you can go in and verify that the SEY, STY, or at-risk is linked to the placement by going under the placement menu, and you will see that there will be an arrow next to the placement. You can click on that and see under number 4 there where that SEY, STY is linked to the placement. Next slide.
All right, thank you. This is Jessica Broger. I'm going to jump in briefly to talk just a little bit about the Pregnant and Parenting Youth Certification. So starting off, I want to acknowledge that we currently do not have any facilities in Minnesota that have the Pregnant and Parenting Youth Certification and that are also eligible for Title IV funding. So a big piece with that is that if you have facilities in your area that are serving this population, your agency can leverage your relationships with them and work with them to help develop them as future settings. And for more information on this, there was a webinar done as part of the initial rollout it's on the Minnesota Child Welfare Training Academy website under the FFPSA link. And so I've put a link in the chat for that to go to that. And there's a lot of different information there. Look for the FFPSA and Expectant and Parenting Youth Overview. There's a PowerPoint, a question and answer, and a practice guide there that will help you. So basically, why would we have this specialized setting? What would be, who would we be referring there? And that's really for youth that are unable to get their needs met in a family foster home, or for our youth that are in the 18 to 21 or the unlicensed supervised independent living setting. So again, as we mentioned at the beginning, we're always going to be looking first at family, kin, less restrictive options, a foster home. But for youth that really do need a residential level of care, it's ensuring that the facility has a specific expertise in pregnant or parenting youth, both their needs as a parent and helping them to meet their child's needs. So for a youth that is in need of a residential setting, a PPY setting would allow co-location with their child whenever possible. So overall, the needs of pregnant and parenting youth are prenatal and postpartum support, and then the parenting support and education. So if or when we have facilities for this specialized setting, the following criteria would apply. So it's really youth who are pregnant. We've kind of moved in Minnesota to talking more about expectant and parenting youth to be inclusive of fathers as well that are expecting. However, based on FFPSA, it's really limited in this case to youth who are pregnant and not the expectant father, and then youth who have given birth to or fathered a child and is taking care of or supporting their child. So the next page would be just the basic data entry basics would be the living arrangements for specialist setting, that expectant and parenting youth documentation that rolled out in 2020. And then, of course, jointly creating and updating the out-of-home placement plan that would include those factors. So with that, I will turn it over to Erica for a brief discussion of the SSIS documentation.
So here you have the PPY SSIS documentation requirements. Again, these can be found under the person node. Once you open the person node, find the expectant parenting youth folder and click on it. You can click on the action menu and choose new expectant parenting youth, or you can right click on that and it will bring up the menu and click new action parenting youth. One thing to also note that I didn't note in the other one is anytime you see a blue hyperlink, that will give you help text. So make sure if you have any questions when answering any of the, or any questions when you're answering these questions, make sure and click on that hyperlink and hopefully it will give you more information. So fill out each question. This is required to be filled out for AFGARs, and it is required to be filled out for youth age 10 years and older in a continuous placement with a start date on or after 9/1/2020. So next, once a youth is placed in the specialized potential or in the specialized setting of a PPY, again, you want to make sure you have the correct setting and reason. You will know you have the correct setting and reason when you see PPY next to the potential specialized setting certification. And again, same as with the STSEY, you want to link the EPY record. So once you have the placement entered, you go to the action menu from the placement screen and you will see add existing expectant parenting link. You want to click on that. And then as you see in number 3, you will find this, that screen will pop up. You will find any of the screens done. You want to choose the most recent one, select that, and then you want to go back and verify that the EPY record is linked to the placement. And you can see that again in number 4 underneath the placement.
All right, thank you, Erica. My name's Nick Vogel. My main role here at the department is the Extended Foster Care Program, and I'm going to cover a little bit of this lengthy title, which we are now calling Certified Residential Setting in a Supervised Independent Living in a Facility. And so the reason why the title is a little bit long, as Beth talked about at the beginning, is there are so many settings that are called SILS or SILS. Sometimes that's supervised independent living, sometimes that's semi-independent living, depending on the program. And so we're really trying to distinguish what the difference is. And so the difference in that facility is that these facilities are certified under FFPSA to provide services to young people in extended foster care that are actually living in a congregate care or a certified residential setting. So not to be confused with what most of us talk about as the unlicensed SILS setting where young people are living in their own apartments or a dorm or a shared living arrangement of some kind. That's not what this is. And so why do we have this setting? So this setting is mainly, again, for young people in extended foster care that cannot either live in a foster home or maybe are not quite ready to live in an unlicensed setting like their own apartment or dorm setting. And so these settings would be licensed through a facility. Much like Jessica stated, we do not have any settings that are currently certified for this. So if you're working with facilities that you think may be interested in providing this service, again, I won't repeat everything she said, but you can go to the licensing lookup that we had talked about earlier and provide that information to the facilities so that they're able to be certified for this setting. There is more information. Again, Jessica provided the link earlier to the Child Welfare Training Academy. For more information regarding this setting, you can also go there. What we're looking for as far as a facility goes, again, I'm not going to repeat, but Phase 1 and 2 are the same as what Darien had talked about, making sure that you have legal authority for placement and then making sure that this setting is appropriate for the young people that you're working with. The difference really comes in phase 3, and that's what the agency is looking for these facilities to do. This facility is specifically trying to get young people ready to live on their own. And so what that means is providing like training and counseling on how to live independently. That means, you know, making sure that they're able to do budgeting, that they have employment or education, how to cook, how to make sure you're making your own doctor's appointments and things like that. One of the main things about this program is that the facility really coordinates and works with the county or tribe with that young person's independent living plan and what their goals are around that. And then furthermore, assisting with discharge planning that we would hope could potentially be an unlicensed supervised independent living setting so that young people can be out on their own to practice these skills. I'll turn it over to Erica for the settings piece.
So this one's really pretty easy. All there is just making sure that the reason and the setting are correct. So similar to the rest of them, once you have the correct setting and reason, you will see SILs next to the potentialized specialized setting certification. And that is it for this one.
Good morning, everyone. This is Erin Kintup. We're going to transition into
Erin,
go ahead.
Erin, this is Beth. Can I jump in? I'm sorry. This is,
No, go ahead,
I'm
Beth.
going to turn on my video, and I'm sorry, my fingers weren't fast enough to type. So I wanted actually to adjust the question. We had a good question from Holly Ann Carlson, and sorry to call you out, Holly Ann, but Holly asked a really good question. So the question I want to, pardon me? I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said. I'm sorry. Okay, well, I'm going to read the question. So the question was from a member of the team, given the amount of work that FFPSA is versus the amount of funding received when the process is completed, we have heard some counties have decided not to participate because it essentially isn't worth it. Has this been talked about? Has there been any ideas about simplifying the process and increasing the amount of funding the county receives? So this question is something that we have heard before, and here is the answer. So Family First is actually Title IV-E law. So it's not something that is an option. These changes are actually written into our state law as well. And so it's not a matter of choice. I would say fortunately and unfortunately. And I know that there is some more work involved in filling out screens for the youth that are eligible for these services. But I try to remind folks that this really is a safety and protection factor for these kids. And it's really an opportunity to provide additional services to some of the most vulnerable kids, and particularly youth, when you're looking at the services that we're providing. And then one of the things that I wanted to quickly mention is, so you just heard Jessica and Nick talk about how at the moment we don't have any certified residential SILs or pregnant and parenting youth programs. So what we're finding at DHS, so one of the things that my staff does is go out and approve facilities for Title IV-E claiming. And so one of the things that we're finding is that there are facilities that actually provide some of these services, that it would be fairly easy for them, or not easy, but it would be a really good natural fit for them at the facility to get certified. We just found this up north in a facility that is already providing, for example, a supervised independent living service within a facility setting. They're providing the service for 16 to 19-year-olds, but they could get certified for 18 and 19-year-olds. And from my understanding and speaking with my staff, I I don't even know that they would really have to change anything to get this certification. What that would allow then is for Title IV claiming for youth that are in that program, and the youth also have to be individually eligible for 4E, just like it is now, then 4E could be claimed beyond those first 2 weeks. So that is the advantage for the county partners, right? Is that after that first 2 weeks, after that first 14 days, then you can continue to claim 4E. So we understand that there is more work in SSIS. We definitely understand that. And that's one of the challenges anytime that there are changes to federal law, particularly when it comes to Title IV, is that there is more paperwork. And then Cheryl is saying, I also assume that screens are developed to make sure we are following the law. Absolutely. And that's part of what this is, right? Is talking about the various screens that when a child or youth is able to take advantage of one of these specialized settings, ensuring that the appropriate documentation is done in SSIS. So I apologize for jumping in front of you, Aaron, and stopping the show. And again, we do understand that it's more work, right? But one of the things that we're trying to focus on at DHS is that this is an opportunity for us to really think about transforming our system and thinking about how we can really provide services that really help our youth in particular to kind of break the cycle, because we know that a lot of our kiddos that come into our system as they continue on in life end up having difficulties. So at Family First is about prevention, but then also about being able to provide services that really result in meaningful change for the children and young adults that end up in our system. So I hope that makes sense. I tried not to talk around it too much. So clarification, did you say counties are not allowed to place? No. Counties are allowed to place outside of a QRTP. That's what Aaron's going to talk about next. A QRTP placement is only for a child or young adult that really needs that level of service. Aaron's going to talk about that process next. You are absolutely allowed to place outside of a qualified residential treatment program. What we're going to talk about is what is required if you do place a child within a QRTP. Okay, and Susan, your question is with the QRTP certification and requiring the 6 months post-discharge. That's one of the things that we're discussing at DHS right now. One of the thoughts is that would likely be included in their per diem rates. And yes, if a child is not 4E eligible and they're placed in a QRTP program, yes, any child that's placed in a QRTP program, you need to follow the law. And the QRTP requirements are written into both federal and state law. So again, whether or not the individual child is 4E eligible, that child or youth gets all of the benefits of being in a QRTP. It doesn't matter whether the individual child is eligible for 4E or not.
This is
And I'm sorry,
Becky
I'm getting off into this. Go ahead, Deb.
No, and I just wanted to add to the question about the post-discharge services. We just recently concluded on June 30th, we concluded a work group that talked about discharge planning and aftercare, which is what this is talking about, post-discharge services. And we will be providing a practice guide on that information. It's due by the end of the year. I also just want to remind folks that the rate that the foster care maintenance rate that is determined for facilities is determined by a host or a lead county contract. And if facilities are aware that they may be able to address that cost through a host county contract, they also may be also able to use other funding that's available. And we even also explored funding that is available from the Department of Education for transition services. So that practice guide is going to provide options for that you will see, but all of the facilities that are QRTPs participated in that work group and discussed with us the need for the QRTP for the aftercare services. Let's come back, Katie, let's come back to your question about the 60-day court approval after Erin does her presentation. I don't want to forget it, but let's address all the QRTP questions together because now we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves, I think. So if everyone's okay with this, Erin, why don't you walk us through the pieces here, and Erica. So I'm going to turn it back over to them.
Sounds great. Thank you, guys. As we've been talking about, we're going to just step through some of the key process pieces of placement in a QRTP. And then we'll pause and switch it over to Erica so she can go through the screens as we're kind of going through the process. So the first piece is if a caseworker is determined that a residential placement in a QRTP is being recommended by the agency, the Juvenile Treatment Screening Team, or JTST, should be convened. We do have a practice guide available and have also done presentations regarding the JTST. There's some pieces in there in terms of timelines, participants, etc. So encourage folks to reference that practice guide for more information about convening your JTST.
All right, once the JTST is convened, you want to go in there and put it into the system. So you will find the Juvenile Treatment Screening Team folder underneath the person node. Underneath the permanency folder, you will see Juvenile Treatment Screening Team. You can click the action menu after you click on it and click New Juvenile Treatment Screening Team. This here is what the screen will look like. This needs to be filled out. Again, you will find a blue hyperlink where it says Juvenile Treatment Screening Team. If you click on that, it will give you some guidance as to how to fill this screen out. Make sure that you are filling out all of the questions that are appropriate. So the answers that you have to fill out are according to whether the QRTP placement is accepted or denied. So if it is denied, you will just see the couple questions there where it says if denied. That is where that will not be grayed out if you click denied on the request status. On this screenshot, you'll see that we clicked accepted. So the questions under the if accepted are to be filled out. So make sure you're filling all of the questions out because some of this information is pulled into the other screens, specifically the placement recommendation. You want to make sure that you fill that question out because if that question is not filled out, you may have some difficulty filling out the other screens. Next slide.
Okay, so the next piece in the process would be completing your QRTP assessments. A couple things involved with that, definitely assembling your family and permanency team. I provided a link to our practice guide for that to make that available. Additional information there, again, about participants and some requirements. Once that's done, you'll want to make a referral to a qualified individual or a QI to complete the QRTP assessment. Included a link to the referral form there as well for you for reference. And then also just link to our bulletin for additional general information about completing a QRTP assessment. But that'll be the next piece after you complete your JTST and get that documented in SSIS.
And Susan, I see that you had a question regarding that last screen about where the ICWA designation gets pulled in. That gets pulled in from the ICWA determination screen. So that is where you would want to fix that. So the next screen is the QRTP assessment referral form. So you will find that form on the person node under the documents. Click on the action menu, choose new document. Click on the magnifying glass. and find QRTP assessment referral form, select that document, complete the form, and send to the qualified individual. For more information on the referral form, you can find that in the job aid listed on the top of this screen. Then the next thing you need to do is input the family and permanency team information into SSIS. Again, that will be found under the person node. Find the permanency folder, click to expand it, find the QRTP documentation folder, click on it to expand it, and then you will find the QRTP family and permanency team. Click on that and click action menu and new QRTP family and permanency team. Again, you will find blue hyperlinks throughout this screen. So if you have any questions when filling it out, make sure and click on that screen. Again, all questions must be answered. The QRTP placement will list all placements that qualify as a QRT placement and have a potentialized specialized setting certification. So if you are not seeing any QRTP placements under this drop down menu, go back to your placements to make sure you have the correct reason and setting. The associated work group will autofill whatever that placement, whatever work group that placement is associated to will show up there. You will want to manually choose the date that the team assembled. Again, that ICWA will pull in from the ICWA record, which is under the ICWA determination screen. And the remaining questions must be answered. If any of these questions are left blank, you will get a data cleanup reminding you to go back and fill them out. You will need to add the participants, those that participated in the family and permanency team. So again, you will go back to where you found the family and permanency team, except this time you will want to click on new team participants. And then we have more on the next slide. So you want to click on, when you click on new team participants, you will be able to add existing clients, add a new collateral, or add existing collateral. So you can click one of those so that you will have the you will be able to search them and choose them if they're in the database. When adding them this way, they will only be affiliated to the family and permanency team, not the work group. Also, if you complete your relative search in SSIS, you can also go to your relative search, which is on, I believe we have screens on the next one to show how to get from the relative search. Yep. So if the relative search has been completed in SSIS, you go again back to that family and permanency team, and you will see the link that says add relatives from relative search underneath the action menu. Click on that, and then it will bring up a screen from the relative search, and you just want to choose the relatives that you want added to the family and permanency team. And then once they are chosen, they will show up in the team participant. So you want to choose whichever team participant you will be selecting. Then you want to select their role. You want to select if they are a team member. Any of the contact information on this screen comes from the person node: address, phone, email, state, detail. So that will need to be filled out in order for it to show up there. So that's to add one participant. In order to add another participant, you start all over with going to the action menu, click on new participant, and then repeat until all your team members are added. Now, after the family and permanency team meet, you want to make sure and add a contact activity, explaining what occurred at the meeting. So you want to go into your contact activity, create a contact with the activity of QRTP family and permanency team. You select the work group, again, associated with the placement and the correct activity. You want to choose the date and time that the meeting took place. So once you have that added under the contact and activities, you want to then link that to your QRTP family and permanency team. So again, from the person node, find the permanency folder, QRTP documentation, and QRTP family and permanency team. You want to click on the action menu and choose add existing contact link. Once you click on that, this screen will pop up and have that contact activity in there. Click OK, and then you can verify that it's linked by checking under the QRTP family and permanency team. Next, you will want to put the QRTP assessment into SSIS. So you will find that from the person node, find the permanency folder, the QRTP documentation folder, and then you want to click on the QRTP assessments, click on the action menu, and click new QRTP assessment. One note to make is that before you get to this, you will want to add whoever the QI is as a collateral to the work group, because you will find on the next page that you will need to add that person, and that is how they will get into that screen, is they will have to be a collateral in the work group. So again, you will find help text on the screen. So anytime you need any assistance in answering questions, you can click on that blue hyperlink. Again, all questions must be answered. If the date recommended for placement in QRTP is not available in that drop-down menu, you want to go back to that juvenile treatment screening to make sure that it is completely filled out. And again, the qualified individual completing the assessment, you will want to make sure that they are added as a collateral in the work group for them to be in the drop-down menu. And then here are the remaining questions for the QRTP assessment. Again, you will find the blue hyperlinks. All questions must be answered. The drop-down menu will list these answers under each of these questions. So you want to choose the placement preference for the child-youth's tribe, if applicable, what the placement preference for the family and permanency team, the placement recommendation for the qualified individual. And then you want to make sure that you are adding the qualified individual's assessment and recommendation report to this screen. So this will show up once you have it attached under the child's file. For directions on how to attach it, you can go to the Qualified Residential Treatment Program assessment and qualified individual job aid, and that will give you directions so that it will show up there so that you can choose it under that drop-down menu.
Great, thank you, Erica. So the next step, assuming your qualified individual has recommended placement in a QRTP, is to place the child in the facility. And in addition, just a note, as we mentioned and Beth brought up earlier, in order to claim 4E funds, all of these pieces need to be documented in SSIS.
All right, so we're back to the screen of making sure that the placement setting and reason are correct to show a QRTP. So there you will find on the right the correct setting and reasons that will lead to a QRTP placement. And you will know it is a QRT placement because you will see QRTP listed next to potentialized specialized setting certification.
And then after placement occurs, there's certainly some additional follow-up pieces in terms of court approval, continuing to engage with the family and permanency team, updating the out-of-home placement plan, et cetera. Again, included links here for folks to our bulletin, as well as our practice guide for reference as you're completing those post-placement steps.
All right, you will need to have the 60-day approval or the court actions. I guess there's a couple different court approvals that need to be made. So you can find more information about them in the QRTP court approval in SSIS job aid. So again, to find the court actions from the person node, you find the court action folder and click on it, click on the action menu and choose new court actions. For QRTP placements, you want to select juvenile or tribal from the drop-down menu, whichever is applicable. Choose the appropriate petition type, filing date, choose the correct hearing type. from the drop-down menu, there is a, under the drop-down menu, there is a QRTP placement review added. So that if this is a hearing specifically for QRTP placement review and nothing else, you can choose that one. If it is something else, such as in this screenshot, you will see that it's just a review hearing. You will be able to click hearing also included a QRTP placement review if that was reviewed during that court hearing. If that check mark will be grayed out if you choose QRTP placement review. And then check the box that corresponds with the order disposition under the order and disposition. You will also want to make sure that you have completed all of the child findings. As with any 4E placements, you want to ensure all the child finding fields are filled out and accurate to ensure Title 4E compliance. Then you will also want to click on the QRTP placement approval. Again, you have a blue hyperlink there. Click on the hyperlink if you have any questions while filling it out. The QRT placement will be chose with any open placements. The open placements appear on top. And then you want to select if the QRT placement was approved or disapproved by the court and when the court made that QRTP decision date. Next, you will also have to complete QRTP extended placement reviews. To find these reviews, you again want to go under the person node, the permanency folder, and then QRTP documentation. And then you will find a folder labeled QRTP extended placement review. You want to click on the action menu and choose new QRTP extended placement review. Here you will find the QRTP extended placement review screen. Again, there's the blue hyperlink to click on. The review status, continuous placement, and current QRT placements are view only screens. So those should autofill according to what is in the other screens. Currently, the calculate review period detail is disabled. The hope is the plan is once that it is fixed, that at the beginning of the review period, the review type and the review period from will automatically fill out, but until then you will need to complete that yourself. You want to fill out the free text here, including the additional information that was considered as part of the review, and then send for approval by clicking on the action menu and choosing send for approval. So in order to approve QRTP placements, you must have that security to approve a completed review in SSIS. Typically, that would be the agency director or designee. They will navigate to the search and logs and select approval log. Under the approval log, they will see if there are any QRTP extended placements to review. And then they will locate the extended placement review under that folder. Then they will click on it and that will take them to the review. They can then, from the action menu, either approve, send for clarification, deny, reset to draft, or withdraw. And then this box, which is on the right-hand corner, will show up in the QRTP extended placement review screen as approved or whatever they clicked under the action menu. And that is it for me.
This is Jessica. I will jump in with the 3 questions that I am not sure that we've answered yet. So the first one I have is that if the 60-day court approval is missed, should the court still review and issue an order approving the placement at a QRTP?
This is Beth. Yes. Again, so the timelines, yes, if you miss it, then that ends 4E claiming and you cannot claim 4E, but that requirement still must be met. So it will impact 4E claiming, but you still need to go through the process. The court still needs to approve the placement.
I will just add to that, Beth, that when the court is reviewing that case ongoing, there are specific requirements that are in the new court review form that is available, that talks about the pieces that must be provided to the court, and CJI has provided training that judges and county attorneys may attend regarding that. So we don't want a child in a QRTP that hasn't been reviewed by the court, even if you miss that 60-day deadline. And then the upcoming review should include the information that's required in those court reports.
Thank you. The next one was in context of the family and permanency team. So I'm not sure about specifics, but it says we have had difficulty after entering the family and permanency team with them then linking for future documentation. Erica, is that something you're familiar with or have more context about?
No. I'm not sure what, so linking, keeping the family and permanency team in, maybe whoever asked the question could be more specific.
And Erica, the other thing then is if we don't have specifics right now, if or if someone else runs across this, would the best reach out be to who first?
To the help desk. Or I mean, my email is on there too, but typically we like any questions regarding SSIS to come through the help desk.
Okay, the next question I have is why can't the QRTP assessment be put in if it's under the participant until we have a placement?
I believe you should be able to put it in prior to placement. If the placement has not occurred yet, you should still be able to put it in and then go back in and add the placement.
Okay, the next one I have here is the one from Amy about the family and permanency team with a family that did not want to include anyone on their family and permanency team. Are we able to continue with the SSIS screen without adding participants?
Well, I mean, there should be participants, even if the participants are the parents. So if, or other collateral people, so there should be some participants, even if the parents don't want to include other people, there should still be participants to add into that work group.
Thank you, Erica. This is Deb. I would just also add that the youth also should be asked if they want to name participants in the family and permanency team. So that would include a conversation with the youth about who they would like to name as supports for themselves. Keeping in mind, and I just want to mention here, during the pandemic, we've certainly not been with the rest of the question in mind. Certainly during the pandemic, we have not brought groups together in the same way. But as you consider wraparound services and how you organize wraparound services for families, I would encourage you to consider doing that with family and permanency teams as well, and to consider how that work can be collaborated with the people who are natural supports for the youth. The family and permanency team is to support the youth and the family in achieving the necessary services to return the child to the community. The idea is to limit the time the child spends in a residential facility and to return the child to the community as soon as possible. Sometimes that may be not with the family, that there may be, the child may already be in placement, and that maybe isn't the goal. But certainly we want to preserve those relationships and make the transition back to the community as smooth as possible for the youth. So that may include school counselors, coaches, teachers, other people in the school system. That may also include people from the family's culture who may be appropriate supports for the family. So really, it's an opportunity to really engage the family in next steps for their child and the supports they need to move beyond the residential placement, but to transition back home. There is a family and permanency guide. And Jessica, I'm trying to remember if there is some information in the guide about what should be discussed during the family and permanency team.
I think it's pretty general in the guide overall, wanting to leave that open to each individual situation and family. But really, I think coming back to what you were just talking about, with ultimately the goal is to transition the child back into the community and looking at what does that look like and how can different people support and offer their expertise about the child and family and what might work best for this individual. And then I think that also I'm going to loop into, are the people involved in the juvenile treatment screening team and family and permanency team the same? They may be and they may not be. Generally, the family and permanency team would be more inclusive and expansive, and there is more information about that in that same guide, and I will pull the link and put that in shortly.
This is Erin. One other thing I would mention too is the family and permanency team is really involved in the QRTP assessment, and the qualified individual really consults with those folks about the youth's needs and strengths. So really important to have as diverse of a group as possible to get a really good assessment from our qualified individuals as well.
And I will just add one more piece, and that is a thank you, Amy, for your suggestion of providing more information or suggestions regarding facilitating an FFPSA meeting, how that would be different. I appreciate that suggestion, and we will continue talking about that. So thank you.
I see there's a question here about, is there a way to add business services in the juvenile screening participants? Can you be more specific about what you mean as business services? Like,
hi, this is Susan Sauls. I'm with St. Louis County, and I am the one that is entering the juvenile screening screens.
mm-hmm.
And we have several staff that partake in our juvenile screening that work with the families in the part of actual Title IV eligibility, as well as placement coordinators. And there, I have to always pick other, and it really doesn't describe why that person's even sitting there.
So what you're wanting is maybe a more, like an additional reason or role.
Yes.
That could be an enhancement request to add that to that drop down menu.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
We did have another question that is similar to one that we previously answered. So just as a quick review, it said, what if the family is not 4E eligible? Do we still proceed with the process? And the answer to that is yes, that the Title IV protections apply to all children, regardless of their individual eligibility for 4E.
I just want to add one clarification to that. This is when the agency, when the county or tribal agency has legal responsibility for the placement. So FFPSA processes do not apply when the county does not have a voluntary placement agreement, a CHIPS petition, or the child is under the guardianship of the commissioner. They apply when those, I'm sorry, I said it wrong. Those apply when the agency has placement responsibility under those pieces. When you have a voluntary placement agreement, when you have a a CHIPS petition that gives the agency placement responsibility. It also applies if you have a Title IV-E agreement with corrections and the agency is making a placement in a QRTP placement. It applies whenever the agency has placement responsibility. The processes do not apply if the agency does not have placement responsibility.
I see there's a question here from Cheryl also about under court actions, placement approval section does not allow adding the QRTP or the decision date or approval. Can we go back to the court actions PowerPoint? Because I just want to make sure that okay, go back one. So this is the court action menu or the court action screen where you put what kind of approval. Now go to the next one. And there you will click on the QRTP placement approval tab. And there it will say decision of the court in regards to QRTP placement, approved or disapproved, and the date that the court made that decision. So it's not under the court action tab, it's under the QRTP placement approval tab. I'm not sure, Cheryl, if that answered your question. It won't let you enter anything. Cheryl, why don't you send an email to the help desk and then they can send it to me and I will help you look at that one just to see what we're missing.
Okay, I just saw a new question come in. Are there any reports in development to assist in tracking QRTP extended placement review timelines?
Hi, Darren. I cannot answer that one for sure, but I will look into it and I will let you know. I believe that there are, but don't hold me to it because I know we're still developing the QRTP extended placement review screens. I think the only so I will look into it and let you know. That's the best answer I have. I'm sorry.
This is an opportunity to talk for a second about the extended placement reviews. There is a team at DHS that is contacting agencies when a extended placement review we are tracking them and we are contacting agencies individually. We continue to work on how this process will be supported, and you can look for more information before fall as we continue to work on supporting counties and tribes to meet that requirement. And again, the Gov Delivery is the best resource for that information. We tend to send it out on a Gov Delivery as soon as absolutely possible. We will provide a copy of this PowerPoint. We will put a copy of this PowerPoint and through Gov Delivery let you know where it is available. And can we also send it to everyone who participated? Does anyone know the answer to that question?
I think so, and I think that the plan is to post this video on the Minnesota Child Welfare Training Academy site, and we will also post the PowerPoint with with the video, but I do believe we can email the PowerPoint out.
Perfect. Thank you.
Deborah, this is Darren with St. Louis County. I just have a quick question about your last comment about DHS reaching out to notify agencies of an extended placement review. Is there a specific contact person with each agency that you're reaching out to, or how is that notification received?
Tendai, do you want to talk about this?
I can jump in, Beth, if Tendai is not.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Brian with the 4E unit. And so there's a team of us that were looking at cases that are coming up for right now we're looking at the under 13, and then we're reaching out to caseworkers and we're trying to find supervisors if we can to copy on those reach outs. So we're sending emails to caseworkers and then supervisors when we can identify them.
Thank you.
Sorry about that, Deb. I was muted and I wasn't able to get back on.
Okay, thank you for the question. We do realize that we need to do more work regarding the extended reviews because as was mentioned in October, it'll be a year since we implemented FFPSA, which seems amazing. So we will continue to have more and more children come up who are no longer legacy, and we will continue to provide information and look for ways of supporting counties and tribes to meet this requirement. I'm just moving to the next question here. Amy asked if there are specific contacts from DHS that you can reach out to individually. That would be the FFPSA email that is reviewed daily. And if someone wants, I think it's in the PowerPoint, and we can also, so if you have a qualified individual request for the pilot state QI program, please email the top email. That is where you would request a qualified individual to complete a QRTP assessment from the state pool. The next question is our general CSP foster care email, and please send any questions you have about any of the FFPSA policy questions regarding that. So that would be the QRTP or other policy questions in relationship to placing children in the specialized settings to that email. And then Prevention Services has their own email, and that would be where questions about the prevention plan could be addressed. And Jessica just posted in the chat the Child Welfare Training Academy website, where this website will be, or where this PowerPoint will be posted. And also posted on there is all of our previous trainings, and each area has a short walkthrough that we've talked about during this presentation, which walks you through the entry information as well for the screenings, for the QRTP placement settings, all of that. So I'm wondering if we've missed any questions. I don't see any questions we've missed. And if there is any additional questions, please enter them in the chat at this time. I just want to thank everyone for participating in this webinar. I greatly appreciate the excellent questions and conversation we've had, as well as the opportunity to provide you with information about entering the requirements in SSIS. With that, I think we can close. Thank you all. Bye-bye.